Special thanks to Surfshark VPN for being the sponsor of today's video. Surfshark VPN is giving my audience an enormous 85% off discount plus 3 extra months for free by going to surfshark.deals/JaysReviews and by using the promo code JaysReviews, all uppercase letters with no apostrophe between the J and the R. In case you're unfamiliar with it, Surfshark VPN is a virtual private network that encrypts your data like your IP address and your internet history, giving you more privacy and security when using the internet. The best part of the package is that Surfshark allows users to change their virtual location, which grants you the ability to connect to foreign versions of websites like Amazon and get deals on them local to that country. Plus, you have the ability to access blocked streaming platform content that might have gotten taken down in your region because of rights issues or whatever else. So you can use Surfshark to bypass said region locking and keep watching your favorite content. Like I said, you can achieve this effortlessly by using Surfshark VPN, who is, again, giving my audience a great deal over at surfshark.deals/JaysReviews plus an 85% off discount plus 3 extra months for free with the code JaysReviews, all uppercase letters with no apostrophe between the J and the R. The link is on the screen right now and will be in the description as well as the pinned comment. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk about some Resident Evil.
Resident Evil 0.
I will admit, I was kind of nervous going into Resident Evil 0. I've never heard very many good things about this game, although I hadn't played it myself, so I couldn't tell you what the big issues apparently were before having played it. But like I said, RE0 had me nervous because I don't like to have a bad time. Resident Evil Code Veronica was a game I played for the first time earlier this year, and that was a game I had a poor time with because I thought it was too long and padded out and very boring. So if RE0 was to be anything more like that, I was concerned. Because at its best, I think the classic fixed camera, tank-controlled RE games are fun. RE1, 2, and 3 on PS1 are all games I really like, 2 especially. RE1's remake on GameCube was also an incredible game, definitely the peak of the classic RE formula. My video last week covered it if you had missed it. Resident Evil 0 was also released on the GameCube a few months after Remake was released, and was the final game to use the classic RE gameplay. Clearly, Mega Man wasn't the only Capcom series guilty of being given releases on the regular back in the 2000s, but I guess the difference is that Resident Evil's actually popular, so I guess it worked out just fine in the end. So what is Resident Evil 0 all about anyway? Well, as the name suggests, it's a prequel to RE1, or rather, a prequel to the remake of RE1. The backstory of Resident Evil 1 was that the Bravo team of STARS got sent in to investigate a series of bizarre murders going on outside of Raccoon City, but STARS lost contact with the Bravo team, so the Alpha team got sent in, beginning RE1. Zero decides to tell that story that brought about the events of the first game. Zero stars Rebecca Chambers, the sole survivor of Bravo team that aided Chris Redfield in his campaign of Resident Evil 1. Rebecca and the Bravo team were searching for a missing fugitive named Billy Cohen, who has apparently killed over 20 people. Rebecca gets trapped on this moving train where every passenger was infected by the T-virus, so she has to contend with the zombies, the kinds of things nobody has ever seen before at this point in the timeline, and also Billy, who's on the train. The two must team up to escape because they have no chance of doing it alone, especially since almost the entire rest of Bravo team was wiped out by the monsters in the woods, setting up Resident Evil 0. Despite the fact that Zero doesn't have a glowing reputation amongst the coverage of it I've seen, I still went into it with an open mind. I mean, I've had cases where I went into something expecting to think one way and came out thinking something different. So RE0 was a game I was willing to give a chance and maybe see the bright side of. And heck, if I did, I could have made a hot take RE0 was actually amazing video. But I didn't like this one. We'll get into all the reasons why in a bit, but I figured I'd mention that RE0 does have positives, and some of those positives are technical improvements from Remake. That game had some very nice looking pre-rendered backgrounds with excellent real-time effects. RE0 has all these things going for it as well. What I thought was better in Zero was that the camera will occasionally pan when you're still on one screen. Helps the areas feel more 3D. Zero also has way more CG cutscenes. In Remake, the live-action opening of RE1 was done over as a CG cutscene, and then the game had some pre-rendered scenes like the shark attack, but mainly used in-engine cutscenes before the brief endings of each campaign. Zero uses CG cutscenes more often throughout the campaign, and I think they look decent, even when upscaled in the remaster. And playing the game for the first time 20 years after its release, I can say this looks good for the standards of its time and passable today. Even creating different versions of the CG cutscenes that play depending on which character you were playing as. And lastly, there's the music. I didn't talk about it during the Remake review, but that was actually the one part of the game I didn't really care about as much. Remake does use some of the same melodies from the PS1 original, but I thought they were much catchier in the OG game, as the Remake was going for a more atmospheric, spooky vibe for its music, which was a bit disappointing considering the fact that I thought RE1, 2, 3, and Code Veronica all had great music that managed to be eerie at just the right moments anyway. Zero was a big step up in the soundtrack department for me, having climactic sounding themes for bosses and some catchy tunes for the main levels. Although the music doesn't continue between screens in this game, the tracks just start over. I only noticed that because in this one basement level, the track starts with this sound. and every time I heard it, my brain immediately thought of the Shredder's theme in the 2003 TMNT series, for the 2 people watching this video who would even get that. So, I had a major problem with RE0 from the very beginning, and it's one that isn't even the game's fault, but rather the remaster. In hindsight, I'm glad I mentioned the button mapping in my remake video because it really became a problem when I started playing Zero. This game already makes changes to the RE formula that took some getting used to, but that was even worse with how muscle memory impacted the play experience. The games were never super consistent with button mapping. RE1 mapped the inventory to start, and RE2 changed it to the circle button. Code Veronica had swapped the run button and the interact button, but then Remake brought it back to the way it was before. In Zero, the square button is your inventory and the circle button is the run button. It just felt so awkward, especially after 2 playthroughs of Remake, and I imagine I'm not the only person who has this issue. I mean, the HD editions of Remake and Zero were released back to back and now are sold together as a bundle. I'm willing to bet countless players have been impacted by this awkward control scheme because it's literally flipped from how Remake controlled. Zero, like several other RE games, has multiple control setups, but none of them let you play it the way you could in Remake, which was also true in Code Veronica not letting you play it like the PS1 games despite having different layout options. A simple solution would just be custom button mapping, but we don't have that. I'm not kidding when I say that the worst part of starting Zero for me was opening the inventory when I meant to use the run button. It was very cumbersome. In my first session, the main thing I used to combat this was changing the control scheme to where L2 aimed and R2 fired your weapons, taking that action off the face buttons and then using the new analog controls I didn't find a use for in Remake as my way to avoid needing to hold down the run button entirely in Zero. But that just felt like a temporary fix, since I still think the D-pad control is a lot more precise in the classic RE games. I mean, seriously, look at me trying to turn this corner with the analog stick compared to the D-pad. So between sessions 1 and 2, what I did was download an app that allows you to remap the control bindings of any game you choose, and with that I altered the controls to be like Remake, and suddenly Zero was a lot easier to play. Playing the game on GameCube felt pretty natural in terms of button mapping, and perhaps that's another argument for sticking strictly to OG hardware, but since most people will be playing Zero like this, it makes sense to tell the people about the control snafu I ran into. Once I was past that, there was the matter of the actual game design. RE0 stars 2 characters, Rebecca and Billy, but this is a more involved part of the game than ever before. You don't pick one character for the whole campaign or trade off in scripted sections like RE2 through Code Veronica. Instead, you play as both characters at the same time. Imagine the part where Leon and Ada traveled to the cable car in RE2, but Ada was a character you could switch to with her own inventory screen. Once Rebecca and Billy have teamed up, you can press one button to switch between the 2 of them and another button to split up or regroup. By default, the partner character will follow you automatically, but if that's not good enough for you, you can control the partner character's movement with the right analog stick, while moving the player character with the left analog stick. I'd say RE0 does the best of the games so far at making the 2 characters feel different. I said last week that I didn't even notice PS1 Chris had more health compared to Jill, but then on RE0, Billy is like a tank in terms of damage. You get hit by the toughest of enemies at full health with him and he'll still be in the green. But Rebecca is made of glass by comparison. You will not last long when getting hit by the toughest enemies as her. But Rebecca has the knowledge on how to mix herbs together for greater health restoration that Billy does not. Billy can move heavy objects and Rebecca can't. Although that just tells me that Rebecca needs to work out more. I mean, Sherry Birkin could move heavy objects in RE2 when she was like 6 years old. In all seriousness, I feel like this aspect of Zero was actually pretty interesting. Controlling the characters is easy to handle, the AI on the partner was reliable when I was stuck in a jam, and switching between them felt pretty intuitive. This has the potential for strategizing repeat playthroughs. For example, early in the train level, you have to get outside and walk over to one car and fix something, but this sends whichever character you're playing as falling back into the hole in the ceiling behind you that they can't get out of. So you need to switch to the other character to find an item they need to escape that room. I happened to be playing as Billy when this first happened to me, so Rebecca had to help. But then I was met with this crab boss I wasn't sure of how to dispose of, so I died pretty quick. When reloading the save file, I decided to switch characters, and that's when I saw just how much more health Billy had over Rebecca. The boss isn't actually that hard, I just didn't know you had to aim down at its head first. I do have an issue with the game dropping things unexpectedly on you like this, which I'll talk about in a moment, but in theory, I'm sure you get what I mean when I say the potential for good strategy is built into RE0, as repeat playthroughs will allow you to plan out which characters you'd want to do certain things as. In terms of structure, there's not too much to say on Zero, it's pretty much the same as the other games. You play various levels like the train, the training facility, the laboratory, the factory, and the treatment plant. Some of these are way longer and more complex than others, but in each area, you should know the drill by the 6th RE game. You start each area by searching all the rooms that are open for items and puzzles that will allow you to enter rooms you couldn't before that will also contain more items that will further allow you to progress until you find the things you need to escape. RE0 is no different from the previous 5 games on that front. Zero is all about the partner mechanic. Resource management has always been an integral part of the RE games, and now you have to manage 2 characters at once, which comes with advantages like swapping ammo and supplies, but also drawbacks like having 2 health bars to worry about at all times and losing your progress if the partner character dies. That alone, I think, is an interesting system that makes the typical RE exploration, puzzle-solving formula stand out in this game. As I have said, you'll need to use both characters effectively to solve certain puzzles and get through combat encounters. That much I think works about Zero. However, I think RE0 is very over-designed. What I mean is that this game makes changes to the formula that I don't think add anything besides fixing what wasn't broken. Let's begin with the fact that there is no item box in Zero. It was a simple concept. You deposit items you didn't want to carry anymore in the item box, and then when you found an item box later in the game, all the things you put in the previous item box would magically be in there. Doesn't make any sense, but it works from a gameplay perspective. Zero fixes something I've been irked by in all the previous games. It was impossible to just toss out items you didn't need anymore. If you had opened all the doors locked by a certain key, the game would let you toss it out, but that was it. If you had something like the knife or the ink ribbons that were taking up item space, you would need to deposit it at an item box. This was never a large issue, but still, a discard item button would have been useful, especially in Chris's campaign of RE1 and Remake, where his lack of item slots got in my way a few times. Zero finally lets you get rid of everything you're currently holding on to, only it doesn't erase it from the game like later games do, it just drops the thing on the ground. You can pick it up later at any time. This much I think is a decent idea. You've got to put more decision making into what items you're going to carry and when you're going to drop them, but in practice, I'd rather we just have an item box. Here's why. It doesn't produce a meaningful change in the gameplay, it just makes things more complicated than they need to be. For example, I'm just going to drop ink ribbons next to the typewriters, which were always next to item boxes in the previous games anyway. So now, you'll have a few ink ribbons next to this save point and a few more next to that one, maybe some knives and things like that hovering around the typewriter when, like I said, an item box would have served the same purpose and would have cut down on the tedium a lot. In Zero, when I find Magnum ammo, I have no reason to take it with me. In previous games, I'd store it in the item box and then get to use it when I finally had the Magnum. In this game, I'd inevitably have to leave behind ammo for a weapon I don't have, and then when I got said weapon, I'd need to run all the way back to wherever the ammo was left on the ground. Or when I had to leave the grapple gun behind, and then when I needed it, I had to run all the way back to where I left it. When if there was an item box in the safe room right next to where the gun was needed, the tedium would have been greatly cut down. This is what I mean. None of this creates a meaningful change to the gameplay, it just adds extra steps to what was already a figured out science in RE1. But that's not the only obstacle to inventory management in Zero. Both Rebecca and Billy have 6 item slots each, which already dampened how much freedom Chris had in exploration in RE1 and Remake. You could say that with the 2 of them combined, you have 12 item slots technically, and from a certain point of view, that's true. But Zero makes it to where that space is going to be cramped quickly. Both characters have their own handgun, and to reload, you need to hold on to that ammo with that character. Sometimes I would have one character hold on to all the ammo and then give some away to the character needing it, but then other times I decided to have both characters hold on to their own ammo because if you were forced into a section where you could only play as one of them, I guess you would just be screwed for not thinking of that beforehand. But then, two-handed weapons also take up 2 item slots when they never did before. This is another pointless addition that makes inventory management more of a pain than it needs to be. I gave Code Veronica criticism for embodying the "what an idiot I am" for my inability to predict that principle, but this game is even worse with that. Code Veronica suffered from that in a few select moments that would probably trip you up if you weren't expecting them, but definitely not one of the more important issues in that game. No, this principle is the biggest issue I had with Resident Evil Zero across the board. Session 2 was easier to play because I had fixed the controls, but now I have new problems. Like this part where Billy lifts this massive object that allows Rebecca to grab the key that was under it, but then Rebecca gets grabbed by a giant centipede-looking thing, so you must play as Billy to save her. But when I got here, I had no health left as Billy, so I couldn't get too close or I'd die. To make matters worse, I didn't have any ammo on hand as Billy either. Rebecca was carrying most of it. Sorry, I did not know I was about to do a boss fight at this exact moment. What an idiot I am for my inability to predict that. Even then, I still died here multiple times because I didn't know the monster was only weak when it exposed its chest every now and again. I just played it like any other RE boss where you aim and shoot and then win. Not that making bosses require more strategy and timing is an issue, I'm just saying that a whole host of things went wrong for me here. And this was a consistent problem for me when playing Zero. Like when Rebecca falls through a hole in the ground and needed to run out of the current area into the boiler room basement just to reach where she was at. I mean, to be fair, the last thing we did was activate a switch that shut the steam off in the boiler room, but my first thought was going to the room Rebecca was in to save her, not run to several rooms away first. Alright, we got the battery needed out front to move this elevator that has the container we need to climb up on and get this item, but oh crap, you can't get behind the container? I have to send Billy all the way back up the entire map just to get him on the elevator too? Just so much extra busy work. Now I'm fighting a giant bat thing and the auto-aim is going ballistic, targeting every bat on the screen but the big one flinging me in the air. Oh, alright, that's finally done. Oh, I need to mix this red mixture with a green mixture, but I'd already passed the green mixture completely earlier. Well, that one's on me for not looking at something as obvious as that, but now I have to backtrack the way I came, and of course, I don't have any good weapons for Rebecca at this moment and got destroyed by these tiny ape-looking zombies, leaving me with no health as Rebecca for the next several moments of gameplay. This became really bad because I had finally gotten through the lab area and could ride this cable car, but this locked me into a cutscene where Billy goes flying over the edge with an enemy and Rebecca is attacked by this obnoxious leech enemy. You'll encounter this early on in the training facility and quickly be overwhelmed by how this thing moves around very fast and has incredibly long reach with his stretchy arms. And it's also indestructible to conventional weapons. It's not actually indestructible, I just wanted to reference a Sly 2 line. Feels like it's been a while since I last did that, gotta get it in. But as I was saying, the human leech is a bullet sponge, so your only defense is mixing these empty bottles with gasoline to become Molotov cocktails. This is the thing the leech is weak to. But this part where Rebecca is forced to kill one came right after the thing I just talked about. I had no health left, so I kept getting killed within 2 seconds because of the reach this monster has and at such high speed. The cocktails are too slow when tossing them and take too long to recover from, so even when I had that, it still took several tries. But hey, at least I got a health pickup right after that, right? But that's when you're tossed into a battle with a tyrant monster. Good thing we just got the Magnum or I'd be screwed. Also, good thing I didn't use too much ammo for said Magnum on these 2 hunters I had to waste. I hope the point I'm making is clear here. It's not that RE0 can't have challenge or things that come as a surprise to players. The issue with RE0 is that there are too many things that come up you'd have no ability to prepare for. As is standard in this series, a second playthrough would alleviate these issues a lot, and you could have fun mentally planning out your preparations for certain gameplay segments via items used and not used and such. But that goes for all these classic RE games. However, the first 3 games and Remake never left me feeling completely blindsided or frustrated. The closest that we ever got was RE3's bosses, and after a 3rd playthrough of that game, yeah, I still think they're pretty obnoxious to contend with. But in the moment-to-moment gameplay, the games I have liked have never made me feel like this. My attempted second run of Code Veronica just left me feeling bored out of my mind more than anything else. With Zero, it doesn't really matter how much easier I would find the game on a second go-around, I don't want to play this again because my biggest takeaway with the experience was that I did not like it. I felt very annoyed at multiple instances. Annoyed in a game already filled with fundamental elements I didn't like. While playing it, I couldn't help but wonder if RE0 was trying to be different in so many ways because of the fact that Remake didn't sell as well as Capcom had anticipated. They knew they wanted to do something different following Remake, but Zero was still in active development, set to release later that year. But I was actually wrong about that theory. RE0's development goes all the way back to the N64, just look at the screen. That's definitely the RE0 train, but with PS1 era graphics. Development was shelved due to issues with the N64's cartridge space, eventually just resuming development on the GameCube. I bring that up because it busted a hole in my theory that this game was trying to do different things as a response to Remake. It wasn't like that. Clearly they just had a hell of a time getting this game off the ground. Its position as a Rebecca-centered prequel to RE1 that opened on a train seemed to be the consistent element though. Although I'm imagining the story went through a lot of rewrites in the process, as the plot we got decided to go all in on fleshing out other games in the series. I already said Zero details the failed mission of the STARS Bravo team that kicked off the whole series, but also showing Albert Wesker working from the shadows before the events of RE1 alongside William Birkin from RE2. This game exploring Wesker and Birkin's training to become Umbrella team members through the files you find at the training facility. The whole plot revolves around Dr. Marcus, the researcher of the leeches who created the progenitor virus that later became the T-virus. Oswald Spencer put out a hit on Dr. Marcus, but the leeches in his system took years trying to revive him and now he's back with a grudge, becoming the main threat that Rebecca and Billy have to contend with, while Wesker plans the STARS Alpha Team mission of RE1. The coolest thing Zero does to tie into other games is taking the cable car to escape the lab, where you then arrive at the marshalling yard from Resident Evil 2. It's fully rebuilt down to the exact rooms, like the security console where the tyrant attacks the B-Scenario character. Rebecca rides the elevator down to the lab of RE2, but you can't actually go in there. Instead, you need to go to the other side of the bottom floor to reach the true final level of RE0. This bit of classic level design did get me thinking, perhaps they intended to remake RE2 on GameCube like RE1, but just didn't get to because of Remake's sales issue I mentioned before. That fact, again, just gets me wondering what could have been. I bring this up, really just so that I can say I talked about RE2 Remake, one of my favorite games. At this point, every single RE video I have ever done has either mentioned it or it's been about it directly. It's like a new tradition at this point. Might as well keep it going. But anyway, I was discussing Zero's story. Overall, I enjoyed it. I felt Rebecca trusted Billy pretty fast for an escaped con, allegedly guilty of killing 23 people, however, it was pretty obvious there was going to be more to the story than we initially realized. All the plot information Zero gives out is pretty interesting, however by the end I felt like a lot of it was pretty superfluous. Now we have more backstory on the T-Virus, which is good. We see Wesker and Birkin working together, that's fine fan service. Rebecca and Billy are good enough characters to carry a game, but I feel like my understanding of the RE universe would be relatively the same if I had not played this game, which isn't exactly high praise for a prequel. The voice acting also feels like a step down from Remake. That game wasn't setting the world on fire in that domain, but here it just feels like the line reads are more stilted and goofy than before. Then you have the fact that characters who were in Remake and Zero have different voices like Rebecca and Wesker. It's also a thing that the guy who voices Wesker in Zero first voiced him in Code Veronica, but didn't voice him in Remake and then came back for Zero later in the year and then played him for the final time in Resident Evil 4. I could not for the life of me figure out why something like that happened, but I was digging around and found this interview with the actor who played Wesker in Remake, and according to him, the 2 games after Remake were recorded in Canada and had to use Canadian actors, before they got more consistency starting in RE5. Although technically I don't have any proof of any of that. I found this topic so interesting because I feel like voice consistency for the characters is pretty important in games. But Capcom is so inconsistent with the RE voice actors that they put Sega to shame. There have been 7 voice actors for Chris in the game continuity alone, but I suppose that's a topic to explore in later RE videos. In the meantime, I can give Zero this at least. I thought the final level was not bad. Besides this box puzzle where if you do something wrong you have to leave the room and do it from the beginning, and without a guide I feel like this amounts to little more than just trial and error. But really though, other than that, I thought the last level was fine. The puzzles are all fairly predictable by this point in the game, like one character operating a forklift and the other character standing on the box that the lift is moving to grab a key that's higher up. And there are some odd moments like how this giant frog thing showed up and grabbed the character I was playing as but didn't attack at all. However, I just appreciate how save points came at just the right moments. Supplies were always given when you needed them, like the materials for flames when the leeches showed up again. And I had a decent supply of health and ammo for the final boss, which is good because it's pretty lengthy. Starting with you running around this room trying to shoot it, and then escaping on an elevator, and then having to distract the monster with Billy so Rebecca can get the roof opened, as Billy gets the final blow on the monster with his magnum, now that it's been exposed to sunlight. With that said, RE0 just kinda ends. Rebecca declares that she's going to pretend Billy died today so he can get away, never to be seen again in the series. She also finds the Spencer Mansion, setting up her appearance in RE1, although it's funny to think that Rebecca just survived all this, fighting hunters and tyrants with grenade launchers and shotguns, but then the next day RE1 happens and she's just got a handgun on hand and that's it. Either way, RE0 ended and I felt pretty relieved. When considering what I thought about RE0, it was tough to put into words. Do I hate RE0? No, that word is reserved for games I actively had a negative experience with. I guess you could say Zero was a game I had a negative experience with, to the point where I'd say I enjoyed Code Veronica more than Zero, but that's the thing. Zero isn't some unplayable mess or is so boring and frustrating that it's beyond the brink of redeemable. It's got decent production values for the time it was released and has much of the same exploration appeal that the previous games had. It's buried beneath the campaign I just didn't find fun because of obnoxious blindsides or things being overly complicated, thus dampening my experience. So I'm not going to say RE0 is a piece of crap, I'm just going to say that I didn't enjoy it. It's a D- compared to the D+ I'd give Code Veronica. Not like I have much interest in a scoring system, I'm just saying how it compares to the other games. I just don't feel passionate about not liking Zero now that I beat it, I just don't want to play it again, and this review detailed why, and that's all that really matters. Looking at the response RE0 got from critics, it was positive overall, praise being given to the graphics in particular, but critics were split on the new gameplay additions for this one. Some thought it was a refreshing change of pace, and others more like me and thinking that it was just needlessly complicating something that was already fine before. Where critics were consistent was in their belief that the fixed camera, tank-controlled Resident Evil gameplay had become obsolete, with games like Devil May Cry having figured out how to comfortably do fixed cameras with analog control. If Remake's response made Capcom believe that it might have been time to do something new with Resident Evil, I'm sure critics saying consistently that the formula had worn out its welcome by RE0 only further backed up that decision to change things up for the next installment. Which is where I want to end this video. Next up is finally that change I've been talking about. Resident Evil 4, which was released in 2005. One of the most influential video games of all time and a personal favorite of mine. So we will explore all of that in the next video. The final video I'm doing in 2022. So I hope everyone's looking forward to it. In the meantime, I'll say what I always do. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.